Hey, what's up? I'm Jason Wojciechowski, or Jason Wojo, and welcome to Wojo's Wisdom. This is going to be a short series of video clips that I do, whereby I'm going to do my best to answer your questions that you get to me regarding bodybuilding, training, nutrition, contest prep, whatever. You can try and ask me. I've been doing this for quite a while, and hopefully I can help you out. I don't know everything, but I have had a decent amount of experience. So I have to start a timer here because I've tried this already and gone over the 10-minute YouTube limit. Okay, so the way this is going to work is you get me your questions either by emailing them to me at jasonwojo@gmail.com, or you can post them online in the dog pound over at intensemuscle.com or in the general discussion section of musclemayhem.com. I already have a bunch of questions. We have enough information and material for several segments already, and each time I get enough questions, I'll do another segment. I don't know how many segments we're going to do total because, as some of you already know, I'm doing a few contests in the next several weeks, and depending on how low those carb days get, I can't guarantee that my thought patterns will be clear or helpful to anyone. So let's get started. Okay, so these are some questions I got off Intense Muscle, and I will summarize some questions if people seem to ask the same questions over and over again. And one that I have gotten quite frequently is regarding my pre-contest diet and cardio strategy. Let's talk about the diet first. So I personally believe that carb cycling is a great way to go. I think it prevents your body or helps minimize your body's tendency to plateau. So for instance, right now I am doing 3 high carb days and then 2 low carb days. Now that will change depending on how I look, and similarly, if you do carb cycling, you really need somebody in your corner that can kind of show you what you need to be doing based on how you look. And everybody responds differently to carbs anyway, so you really have to tailor that specifically to your diet. I happen to respond quite well to carbs compared to some people. Right now I'm having about 350 grams on my high carb days and about 200 on my low carb days. So that's not really low compared to what some people are doing. I have friends who are literally taking in 20, 30 grams of carbs a day for extended periods of time, and that's what they need to get lean. I happen to think that my body prefers that if I would be a distance runner and likes to lose fat quickly, so I can seem to get away with that. So that's what I think is a really good approach to pre-contest dieting. Now let's talk about the cardio for a second. I prefer low intensity cardio over high intensity. I'll tell you why. This is a huge debate, and I've received probably a half dozen questions on this, specifically comparing the two. And the reason I like the low intensity, especially for pre-contest dieting, the reasons are several fold. First of which, I believe it's probably a little less catabolic than high intensity cardio, so you're less apt to lose that muscle tissue that you've worked so hard to accumulate. 2, I think you're less predisposed to injury. I can't see any way that it's worth the risk of me sprinting to pull a hammy or something like that, and it's just too much of a chance, especially when you start getting really, really lean. And I notice this in my training as well. Like, you can feel not twinges, but you can feel things are kind of like on the edge of injury. You need to be really careful with that, and with high intensity cardio, I think you may be pushing that limit a little too much. And the last reason I prefer low intensity cardio over high intensity is the fact that I want to save my carbohydrates for my training, for my weight training, and I don't want to use them for my cardio. Now, it is true, you will burn more overall calories doing high intensity cardio. And that's great, and if you're in a really big rush to lose fat, it may be a better choice, but if you start early enough, you won't have to do that. And you will burn a higher percentage of fat doing the low intensity cardio, even though your calories are going to be less. So that's my approach on pre-contest diet and cardio. So another question I have that seems to be emerging quite frequently is in regards to DC training. So everybody knows I do DC training. I've been working with Dante for several years now, and quite honestly, I find it to be the most effective form of mass building and weight training that I've personally dealt with. And I started off just like everyone else doing the high volume approach, where I wasn't ridiculously high volume, but I was still doing 9, 12 sets per body part for the bigger body parts, maybe like 7 to 10 for the smaller body parts. And one of the things that you need to realize with DC training, if you're going to start it, is first of all you have to be an experienced weight trainer with at least a few years of serious training under your belt. If you are not at that stage, do not attempt DC training. You're just not ready yet. And I know everybody wants to jump the gun and think they're ready, but you're just not going to benefit as much as you could had you waited to really get that experience. When you give DC training a try, there's one thing that I experience, and that is that you will have a sensation and the feeling that you didn't do enough work. You didn't do enough volume. You'll be done your workout and feel like you didn't even do anything because you're so used to doing so much more volume. And the reason that is true at the start is that you have not learned yet to recruit the intensity that you need to gain off of DC training. But don't be discouraged, because that will come. It took me several workouts, several weeks, in fact, until I actually felt like I got a good workout with DC training. But now that I do DC training and I know how to recruit those muscle fibers, I know how to give absolutely everything I have over those 3 rest pause sets, I can't even imagine trying volume training. In fact, during some of my cruises, I've tried to kind of add a little more volume in, experiment with different exercises, and I can't do it. I mean, I'm done after, I'll do 1 or 2 conventional sets and I'm cooked. And it's because I don't know how now not to give everything I have on those, that small number of sets. So once you learn that, you don't need 10 sets to do chest. There's no way I can even fathom trying to do that much volume. And what we're trying to do with DC training is hit the body parts a little more frequently, and with that higher intensity, lower volume, and that's going to give us more potential growth spurts throughout the year. So that's my view on DC training versus conventional training. Now I think we have time for one more question, and here's one. We probably don't have time for that one. Let's do this. Okay, what body type do you have, and where did you start in bodybuilding in regards to age, weight, and training style? This is by Dark Guitars over at Intense Muscle. I already answered the question about the training volume. That was my approach. I actually started weight training in college for track. I was a pole vaulter, and when I had a bunch of recurring injuries, I was forced to try something else. So I was 20 years old, I started bodybuilding, and I put on a decent amount of weight right from the start, mostly probably because I wasn't running track anymore, so I wasn't burning those calories, but I was instantly hooked because I was always a skinny kid. I am an ectomorph by nature, you can probably tell. I have small joints. So to me, that's one of the big reasons bodybuilding was fantastic for me. I was bit by that bodybuilding bug right from the start, because now I'm like, hey, I don't have to be 145 pounds, I can be 155. But I've come a long way since then, but that's where I started. I think that's where a lot of people start. Either you start off in bodybuilding, you're an ectomorph, you're skinny, or you can be an endomorph and be a little bit on the bigger side. I mean, it's a very rare individual who is lucky enough to be a mesomorph and have the best of both worlds. So all of us are dealing with some genetic factors that influence our progression in weight training. Okay, I think that's about all the time we have for the first segment. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you back here for part 2.